各位朋友们，大家好，安安大家好，我是苏探，欢迎来到今天的节目。我跟太太，我们两个人到了立陶宛的国会。那今天特别来访问立陶宛国会议员Dovilė Šakalienė。Dovilė, thank you so much for letting us come here, and thank you so much for agreeing to be a part of this interview. I know that you have been in Taiwan a couple of months ago. How do you feel about the country? Did you like it there? Can you give some of words to my Taiwanese viewers?
Well, I really miss my Taiwanese friends. I wish I could see them soon enough. And I haven't seen much of Taiwan, I admit, because due to COVID pandemic, we were kept in a very strict diplomatic bubble. I mean, the strictest that I've ever seen. But it's understandable because Taiwan is a perfect example how pandemic can be controlled with applying very careful scrutiny and very adequate measures. So I wish I would be able to come and see the beauty of Taiwan sometime later. But what I was able to see, and it made a really big impression on me, were the people. So we had very high-level meetings from your president, Madam Tsai Ing-wen, and it was an honor really to meet her. From first look, a very fragile, tiny woman with absolutely steel spine, very clear opinions that are full of wisdom and insight, and also your prime minister. He made also a great impression on our delegation as a person who is really wise, has seen a lot, and made very insightful comments. For example, he said, I won't be able to quote exactly, but the idea was that People's Republic of China is building its power on fear. It's based on fear. Therefore, it's very fragile, because fear crumbles sooner or later. So I think that, he really has a lot to give, and I'd be happy to meet again. And of course, your Minister of Foreign Affairs, Mr. Joseph Wu, was someone who really charmed our delegation. Someone being so open-minded, yet very competent, very professional, and we had a lot to talk about. And of course, we met your National Security Council leadership, we met Minister of Economics, we met Council for Development, and etc. We had dozens of meetings, I think about 3 dozens of meetings in the course of just 1 week. So this was probably the most intense visit that I had, at least in this term.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for these warm words. And I do agree with the saying that the power which is built on fear, it can easily crumble. Exactly. And for Taiwan, it's a country that has been under constant pressure from a big neighbor. Probably it's a little bit similar to what's going on in Lithuania. I think that democracies, the democratic countries who have been under some authoritarian pressure before, we should unite, we should share experiences, and probably there is a lot of things that can be shared between Taiwanese experiences and Lithuanian experiences. And finally, the representative office of Taiwan is being opened in Vilnius, and it will be much easier for the citizens of both Taiwan and Lithuania to communicate, for the cultural exchanges, for the people to come here, because when you have a representative office, you can do a lot of things much more easier without going to the third country, right? And what do you think about the further development between of the relationships between Lithuania and Taiwan?
So we all know that People's Republic of China has reacted very inadequately to opening of Taiwanese representative office. And what was really surprising is that their narrative contained so much threats and intimidation and allegations that were completely unjustified. Lithuania has not violated any international agreements or bilateral treaties, and we are free to exercise our right to develop, to nurture relationships with any society or any state that we'd like. So when we are talking about Taiwanese society, Taiwanese people, then of course democracy is something which is closer to us, which is something that we'd like to nurture and to hold on to. We know that democratic space in the world is shrinking. And the current research shows that we have to protect democracy, and democratic bloc has to be united. So we believe that developing relations with Taiwanese not only in cultural area, but even more so in economic area, in the area of science, of education, of medical research, and other areas from biotechnologies to other IT fields and etc. We see a lot of potential. First of all, because Taiwanese are just like us, democratic society, which means that this is a very good platform for predictable, sustainable, and long-term relations. That means that we can trust each other, that we are both transparent, and that we build our relations on legitimate grounds. Whereas when we talk about People's Republic of China, what we have seen is deterioration not only of democracy, but also of upkeeping of international standards.
Yes.
And the attack on Lithuania is an attack on whole EU because it destructs the concept of single market, and also an attack on global trade because the free trade must lead businesses where they want to go and not where someone politically pushes them to. And in that case, what we see is Beijing basically building a Sino-centric trade system instead of free trade system. And that is also destructing the whole concept of free market. So in that case, what we have to do is we have to stand united and to protect our values. At the same time, we need to hold the international agreements, and we still need to use the legal means. So I'm so glad that EU turned to World Trade Organization to initiate investigation.
Yes, it was the right decision by the European Union, because for the People's Republic of China, when they're trying to disrupt the common the single market that we have right now here in the European Union, and actually it's bullying against one country of the whole bloc. And what was very surprising for me when I saw it on the news, that the People's Republic of China is putting pressure on, for example, German companies, German car manufacturers that procure some of the parts from Lithuania, and they tell them not to buy anything from Lithuania or you will lose an access to the Chinese market. But on the other hand, what we see is that Taiwan right now decided to launch $1 billion United States credit fund for Lithuania. And in addition, there is going to be 200 million investment in Lithuania,
yes,
including the area of semiconductors, which is one of the most crucial industries of Taiwan. Could you tell the viewers a little bit about the whole embargo which is being placed by China, by People's Republic of China, and if the measures that are being taken by the Taiwanese, if they will help Lithuania, and how do you see the further development of economic relationships between the two?
So first of all, there is a disclaimer. I am working on the Committee of National Security and Defense, the second term, so economic relations is not my area of expertise. But what I can do is share some information related to this, and my own subjective opinion and my hopes. So I'll start from the positive ones. Of course, I'm sure and I'm hoping that the credit program and the investment fund will add to sustainable long-term relationship which is mutually beneficial for Lithuanian and Taiwanese societies, but at the same time beneficial Europe-wise and globally. Because whenever we develop new technologies, whenever we build joint projects and programs together, what we do is we build more sustainable future in the fields of what you mentioned, semiconductors. We can't imagine the world of today, not even talking about the world of tomorrow, without successful use of this technology, but also biotechnology, investing in science. What we need a world which is safer for every human being, and we need a world which is more sustainable. So I think this is going into the right direction. But when we talk about the sad moments, is what People's Republic of China has been doing with Lithuania with the means of economic coercion and undeclared secondary sanctions, which is unprecedented situation. Yeah. So I can mention several facts. So, for example, Chinese started attacking us last summer in August, when the Minister of Foreign Affairs informed our ministry about the recalling of the ambassador and arguing that Lithuania's position on Taiwan is unacceptable, and forcing us to recall our ambassador from Beijing to consultations. But nevertheless, we also suspended in November the issuance of visas in Lithuania. And when they indicated that it was suspended for technical reasons, well, I won't comment on that. Then also in August, China's railway company, China Railway Container Transport Corporation, announced that at the end of August and September, direct freight trains from China to Lithuania will be cancelled. Then on the 2nd of December, Lithuanian business announced that Lithuania was deleted from China customs system as a country, stopping all exports to China from Lithuania. And the situation lasted for some time until European Union asked what's happening and what's going on. And that's another positive moment. So when we react as a team, then change happens. So Lithuania miraculously reappeared in the electronic customs system. Also, Lithuanian companies were not able to get their goods to China from the beginning of December at all. And when this term Lithuania was selected at the Chinese customs system, then system error used to occur. So still technical measures of challenging our
technical
business.
Issues.
That's why we say, we retain deniability.
Okay.
Yes, so that we can then deny whatever we did. Then another moment is that according to one of our economists, Marius Dubnikovas, the value of goods that were stuck at Chinese customs at the end of December were 20 million euros. And 60 million euros worth of goods were en route to China at that time. And they were also not allowed to enter China. And also in the beginning of December, a number of multinational companies reported that they were not able to clear their imports of goods or components into China that contained even the smallest element produced in Lithuania, and were pressured by various agencies in China's government to sever ties with Lithuania, as you said, or face the chance to being shut out of Chinese market. What is very important is that on the 24th of December, EU Trade Commissioner Valdis Dombrovskis told that apparently Chinese customs is not processing goods from other EU countries if they contain parts from Lithuania. So this was officially acknowledged. And also, China consistently continues to deny introducing sanctions against Lithuania, but China's state-affiliated media has confirmed on numerous occasions that this was a centralized initiative aimed at punishing Lithuania in an exemplary way to deter others from taking sovereign decisions on questions considered sensitive to China. So my colleagues working in the economic area provided, this list of facts to me, because as I said, I work in security and defense area, but this is very closely related. How can we feel safe when a state that big uses threats, intimidation and coercion towards us? But it shouldn't be surprising, because in the last decade, there were registered more than 150 cases of coercion and intimidation by People's Republic of China towards more than 24 of states in the world.
This is very worrying, and how the People's Republic of China, how they are using their propaganda, what are their propaganda efforts? Because what you just said about the sanctions and how they're trying to explain to the world that it actually is Lithuania which is to blame. It's all Lithuania's fault. For example, their state media here, I have some, I just found it on the internet, like Global Times, Hu Xijing, who is a very infamous or famous, I don't know which one is better, a very hostile person towards Lithuania. He called Lithuania a crazy tiny country full of geopolitical fears. Its strategy is to cling to the United States as tightly as possible. Lithuania will eventually pay the price for its evil deed of breaking international rules. But here, it's not Lithuania which is breaking the international rules. Here, it is People's Republic of China who is putting forward an embargo on Lithuanian goods and who is trying to bully Lithuania internationally, because by developing relationships with the people of Taiwan, Lithuania violated nothing. And there is a second thing. China's Ministry of Foreign Affairs spokesperson, Zhao Lijian, on his Twitter, he accused Lithuania of racism, which is also very interesting. I know that you are very proficient in human rights. That's one of your main focuses of your work here. And he said that Lithuania has a deplorable human rights records. And I don't know, are these news discussed in Lithuania? Do Lithuanian people, what do Lithuanians think when they hear such a hostile rhetoric coming from the mouthpieces and even the spokespeople of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of a big country like People's Republic of China?
I think that one of the main methods of action for authoritarian regimes is intimidation. So in that we are not very successful, as the majority of Lithuanian society doesn't read what we are writing and how they are scaring us, and we don't really care. So that probably didn't reach the target. But when we are talking about the decision makers and people who are interested in these issues, when we are talking about politicians, experts, the media, our institutions, of course we are worried, because intimidation by a global power, which is becoming more and more hostile, and yes, we know that People's Republic of China has probably the most territorial disputes with its neighbors compared to other countries. I think 17 countries or territories around them, land or maritime debates, and the infamous 9-dash line is something that really is a lesson to everyone, but it's a very dangerous territory that this country, who proclaimed itself to be an economic power, in fact is becoming more and more hostile towards others. So yes, as a small state we are worried, but no, we don't cling to anyone, and we understand that for communist regime it's probably impossible to realize and understand that countries have their independent opinions and positions, and we choose our partners, our allies, and we enter or leave alliances that we decide to after considerations and assessment, and our society has a say in how we proceed. So in this sense, yes, of course, we see United States as a strategic partner, as an ally, which is very important to us. But our foreign policy is our independent foreign policy. As
you are also working on informational security, on cyber warfare, recently there was a surge of cyber warfare attacks against Taiwan. And Taiwan is being constantly under a target of misinformation, of fake news coming from the People's Republic of China. And Lithuania is also a target of such efforts, not only from China, but also from Russia. And especially if we're talking about the recent events and hostile policies of Russia towards Ukraine, kind of information can be shared between, and what kind of experiences can be shared between Lithuania and Taiwan, because you both are targets of those massive cyber warfare efforts that are actually influencing public opinion and how the people vote in the end, and what do they say about the current state of foreign affairs?
Well, that's a lot of questions in one question, so I'll try to answer one by one. If I forget anything, please remind me. So regarding disinformation campaigns and in general informational incidents that are happening, so of course Lithuania has been under heavy attack from Russian Federation, also from groups related to Belarusian special services and etc. So yeah, we know how that feels, and the narratives are repeating themselves. And what is interesting is that some of these narratives are very similar to the ones that People's Republic of China uses. Well, for example, one of the popular ones is anti-American. Yeah. So trying to show that they are not to be trusted, or that they will betray their partners, etc., etc.
Like in Taiwan, right now, more and more news that Americans will not come if Taiwan is being attacked. Exactly. We should not trust Americans. Like one of the big media people in Taiwan here recently said that we should not trust neither Americans nor training coming from American military. So it's it was very surprising for many Taiwanese people. But such a misinformation effort, it's been very obvious.
But this is one of very usual tactics of hybrid warfare. Yeah. I mean, if you can confuse your opponent in the informational field, then basically part of the war is already won. So if we can make us distrust each other, if we can make us feel that our partners can betray us, then of course the will to defend or the resilience of society in the sense of their in the informational sense is much worse. But another moment, actually it is true. First of all, we should depend on ourselves, just like Lithuania being a member of NATO. So a lot of things are being done as a team, and the recent situation where Russia has presented series of ultimatums, basically requiring that NATO goes to 1997 territory or establishes the two-speed NATO, where some of the members wouldn't be as defendable as others. This is completely absurd. But then what happened is it was followed by the informational campaign, by the disinformation that NATO isn't able to protect itself. At the same time, these provocations that NATO is somehow being a threat to Russian Federation and is hostile and aggressive and is planning to attack someone, etc. So what is interesting when we talk about disinformation campaigns, so that often the messages are conflicting each other, and that is one of the goals, to confuse society, to bring informational chaos where people don't really know which information is to be trusted, what is to be next, and who can they trust in provide the objective information on the situation that is developing very rapidly. And informational chaos means that it's easy to manipulate the society, yes. And then again, it kills the will to defend oneself. So yes, we must invest in our own defense. We must raise the level of resilience of our society. We must do whatever we can when we talk about military preparation of our society, but it has to work on all levels. Our resilience in the sense of society, political, military, and all other dimensions. And then, of course, the next one is learn from each other and share our practices. Lithuania is considered to be really an expert when we talk about prevention of disinformational attacks, deconstructing them, when we are talking about hybrid warfare. So when I presented my report on disinformation campaigns when in Taiwan, we had this wonderful conference on democracy. What we realized with other speakers on the panel, that not only some narratives are very similar that are used by PRC and Russia, but also some methods, the troll farms, the certain algorithm that are used on the internet. Sorry again for my English. But then another moment is that also they don't give enough credit to our people. They think that our societies are more stupid than they are in fact. No, our people aren't that stupid, and they are able to distinguish between disinformation and the true thing. They are able to check the information, because the media literacy and the informational literacy is being developed all the time. Awareness raising of the hybrid warfare, of the disinformational campaigns, of information incidents is also being organized all the time. This type of education is critical to us. Lithuania and Taiwan both are in a very vulnerable positions geopolitically, but we both are very resilient societies with quite a difficult historical experience where we can learn from each other. Lithuania has fought for half a century with Soviet communists, and one of the difficult challenges was that it was difficult to fight off the narrative of Soviet communist propaganda, because we didn't have enough of channels to publish our opinion. Times have changed. So Taiwanese now have better access to the world, and the more allies they have, the more easy it is to disrupt the fake narrative of People's Republic of China. And when the world knows what is happening in fact, then they of course are much more willing to help.
Talking about the influence of the authoritarian and totalitarian regimes on societies, right now transitional justice is being widely discussed in Taiwan, because Taiwan used to be under martial law for 38 years. That's one of the longest periods of martial law in human history. Taiwan also used to be ruled by their authoritarian government of Chiang Kai-shek. There was a period of time which was called the White Terror, which was against the Taiwanese people. Lithuania went through transitional justice processes in the 90s. And can you share some of the experiences, and what can be and how important is transitional justice to actually further have an immunity against those authoritarian regimes and against those influences of the cyber warfare or spreading of the fake information. Do you think these topics are related, and if there is something that the Taiwanese people and Lithuanians can learn from each other?
Well, I think that for transitional justice to be efficient, what is important is education of society and also awareness of society. How much are they willing to accept what happened and to which direction they want to move further? Because we have to acknowledge that justice is different from revenge. It's quite a different philosophy. And in Lithuania, we had a decision that was maybe a little bit different from some other countries which had, for example, lustration laws which were very strict. We decided that if a person acknowledges and can write confidentially that he or she cooperated with the Soviet communist regime, then there is no need to make it public. What is important is the matter of conscience. And of course, Russian Federation, under different pretenses, through different proxies, tries to raise this question again and again, so that these lists would be made public and so that these people, as we say, should pay. But what we know is that we don't really have the full lists of people who were engaged, involved. Some of them were really pushed to cooperate. And then what would happen then that KGB or FSB, it doesn't matter how it's called, it's the same organization.
The people didn't change in those organizations, they just changed the name.
Yeah, one of them is the president, so.
Yeah.
But another moment is that what we know is they would blackmail people who were not made public, their family members, and that would create another rupture in our society. So yes, the times were really horrible. I come from a family of political prisoners, and my family members were exiled to Siberia. They were sentenced for helping forest brothers. I mean, we were on the side of suffering, but I don't hate neighbors. I don't hate people who collaborated or cooperated with the occupant regime. Maybe they couldn't find another way to survive. I mean, it's not for us to hate each other if we want to build a future which is sustainable, which is strong. So I believe that in transitional justice, it is important to make a clear distinction that, of course, for crimes that directly affected another human being, that cost this human being his or her life or freedom, I mean directly damaged someone's dignity, life, health, and etc., responsibility has to be taken. But to divide society, to make new ruptures, and to start a witch hunt is counterproductive. It's what the occupant would want. So we can't let this rule of divide and conquer be applied on us again, even after we survived, after we evolved from a very difficult period to a better period. So, and I don't know enough about transitional justice professionally. I'm a criminal psychologist, I'm not a lawyer, so there are, of course, some issues that need to be dealt with, but that's just my subjective opinion based on my history.
Thank you. I think that's a very important thing to understand. It's important to find consensus, but at the same time, maybe which is also might be interesting for the Taiwanese people, it is important that the society says that we don't want the same thing to happen again, just to say it publicly. Like the same thing happened in Poland during the period of transitional justice, that at least publicly it was said that we don't want the same thing to repeat again.
Yeah. We need to remember, we need to be very aware of what happened and why it happened, but witch hunt is not a solution.
It's not acceptable.
Because then we will have another innocent victims.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you so much. And the last question. As right now, Lithuania is being discussed in Taiwan everywhere. There's so many news about Lithuania. Lithuanian products are very popular. For example, Lithuanian craft beer is being widely bought by the Taiwanese, and it's very good. And
we are proud of our beer. We believe that if it's not the best in the world, then it's one of the best in the world.
Well, we have something to discuss here. I come from Poland, But anyway, any kind of products like sweets, produce, if it comes from Lithuania, Taiwanese people would like to support it because Lithuania has been so supportive to the Taiwanese democracy, to the Taiwanese society. And is the same thing correct about Lithuania? Do Lithuanians buy Taiwanese products right now? Is Taiwan being discussed? Is there like a rise in popularity, I don't know, for example, of Taiwanese culture, Taiwanese food, Taiwanese, everything related to Taiwan?
Actually, I think that this is, exactly the moment where everything should, spring and develop very quickly. Because we started to talk about Taiwan within our society just months ago. Let's agree that we didn't have enough cultural connection before. Lithuanians didn't know about Taiwan enough. And what the first step was when Taiwanese donated masks to Lithuanian doctors. That was, it surprised our society. It really, warmed our hearts. And a lot of people then started to ask for the first time, where's Taiwan? What kind of people live there? They're so kind to us, and this is amazing. And it's not in the political level, and not in the decision-making circles, but in society. People started to talk about Taiwan. I myself actually went to look for Taiwanese products about then, and I found a small shop where I discovered mochi.
Okay.
These were amazing. I tried all the sorts I could find in Vilnius, and some of my colleagues were joking, that I converted to Taiwanese cuisine, obviously. And then later, during my visit to Taipei, even though we couldn't go anywhere, but we could try different delicacies, and high mountain tea, Taiwanese tea from high mountain plantations. I love it.
It's the best in the world. It is.
I can agree on that. And I brought several boxes, and all my family and friends are enjoying it. And everyone says, we can't find it in Lithuania. Can you find it in Lithuania? And I'm sorry, I didn't look for it yet, but I'm going to. So at least 2 products really conquered my heart. And I'm sure that other Lithuanians would find many more things too. Oh, and this is not an edible thing, but face masks. I'm a workaholic. I don't really have time, for any beauty procedures, beauty routines. This is bad, I know, I agree. But when I was there, the new friends that I made there, they were wonderful, very friendly, very open-hearted, and they said, would you like to try this and that and that? And then one of them said, face masks, do you use them? And then I said, no, I'm sorry, I don't have time. And then she said, you have to. I strongly recommend. And, she was such a nice person. And then I said, okay, I'll try. And I did. And now I'm hooked up on them at least once every week. Because of her, I find at least 15 or 20 minutes for that. And I love it. So this was actually chair of Lithuanian Taiwanese community in Taipei, Aušra Andriuškaitė. So Aušra, greetings to you. I started using face masks. Thanks to you. Taiwanese face masks are the best in the world.
Great. That's also probably a very good business opportunity for some Taiwanese business people who are watching us tonight. Okay, thank you so much, Dovilė Šakalienė.
Yes, perfect.
Thank you so much, Dovilė.
Thank you, Stanislav.
Thank you. And I hope that we'll have an opportunity for a second interview, maybe in some time.
Absolutely.
非常感谢各位的观看，如果喜欢这种内容的影片，请帮按赞、订阅跟留言。想赞助的话，在这里影片下面会有Patreon这个网站的链接。我是斯坦，我们下次见。
多谢。
多谢。
OK.
Viso Gero.